There's an age-old question that has been rephrased to the modern day. It asked whether the gods say something is good because it is good, or if it's good because the gods say it is. Naturally, that has been reapplied to Christianity and other monotheistic religions. Some people question the notion of objective moral standards on the basis that even if God exists and is the moral lawgiver, that moral standard is God's own subjective morality. But I think this stems from a misunderstanding of the relationship between God and reality, because theoretically God is a foundation from which the rest of all that exists flows from. God's subjectivity is the only reality and moral law of the universe. See, because God designed morality, while it's technically true that any attempt at a moral standard would be God's personal idea of morality, if the universe and human civilization were designed to function as a certain way, though others might disagree with the moral beliefs, there is at least adequate foundation to hold to sacred texts as a nearly objective moral standard. The topic of this video is whether God created evil, and so it seems that because all that exists came from God and there is evil, naturally it seems that God created evil, a question I'm sure all of you have wondered. You might hear someone say that evil is to good as dark is to light, simply the absence of it. But I think that evil is more active than that. As if there is light, in order for light to be replaced by darkness, something must actively cause the light to be removed. This will connect to the conclusion at the end. Some might also give a free will defense, declaring the necessity to choose things that are not good, in order for the choice to do good to really mean something, such as to love God, which shouldn't be forced as the natural state of everything. Not every answer, including the one that I will give in this video, will personally satisfy everyone in this current moment, or maybe for some people, never in their entire lifetimes. The Bible is very straightforward about the prevalence of evil, which starts with the actions of sinful people and beings because creation is fallen. It is less straightforward as to why there is such a thing as evil in the first place, and why it must necessarily exist, why it is even possible for creation to fall from grace. Faith and doctrine compels me to answer no to this question, and so that's where my attempt to find an answer will start from. So my bias is acknowledged. Whether my answer convinces anyone else is out of my hands. To answer this question, I'm going to start in the very beginning of the Bible, with the account of the Garden of Eden and the fall of man from Genesis 1 to 3. We hear over and over that what God created is good, things functioning as they should be. In that sense there is a harmony, and that harmony extends also to the relationship between God and man. It's a time of proper relationship between God and his human creations Adam and Eve, as well as good relationship between Adam and his wife Eve, and between the humans and with nature and animals, and harmony in the work that they do. A lot of this harmony is also the very trust that Adam and Eve have in God, obeying him. It's hard to argue that this is not an essentially perfect state of the world, a good world, better than the one that we live in right now. But of course most people should be aware of what happens to this world, which is that the serpent strikes at Eve by tempting her, and Adam follows her into eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In that moment the serpent attacks the relationship between Eve and God by pushing her to question the goodness of God, and implying that God is withholding good things from her, and that she should be like God. Furthermore, there is an attack on the relationship between Adam and his wife, as instead of going to God in honesty and repentance, Adam and Eve hide from God, and when God calls them out, Adam blames Eve for giving him the fruit of the tree, and Adam blames God for giving him Eve. And from all angles the serpent has successfully attacked the relationship between man and God, and all that comes under that, and all the harmony of man to nature, to animals, and to their work, to life itself as death enters into creation, is broken. At this point you might be picking up where I'm going with this, but if you don't, I promise that this will relate to the origin of evil by the end of this video. Let's take a look at the 10 Commandments. They are as follows. prefaced by God saying, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and mother. You shall not commit murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet anything that is your neighbor's." Of course, I trimmed all of these down a bit, for the sake of brevity. The first three seek for us to obey God, to worship Him in obedience to Him, to honor Him and not to worship anything else. These seem simply like strict rules, which, to be fair, most of us would agree to. They are "thou shalt not" statements. But if we look at it from another perspective, these commandments are also protecting things that are good. We should not steal because it is good for people to have things to call their own, and to steward things, to be happy with the things they have, and delight in them. It is good for us to be in good standing with our neighbors, not to steal from them. We should not commit adultery because the relationship between a man and wife is sacred. We should not murder because life is good. And as for the Sabbath, it is good for us to rest, and for us to have a good balance in life with work. It is also good for us to not only trust in ourselves and our own self-sufficiency, but also in God. And finally, it is good to have a good relationship between God and every individual, which I will cover more in another video, which I will make soon. I think you can also see the strands of Eden here, with exile from Eden being associated with the corrupting of the relationship between man and wife, Adam and Eve between man and his work, and with being content with the very much that they were given, the entirety of Eden except for one tree, and ultimately between Adam and Eve with God. There's a quote attributed to J.R.R. Tolkien regarding the nature of evil, though it's really a summation of his fictional works. In his stories, this is also portrayed by the orcs, which in Tolkien lore were the noble elves corrupted by the work of Melkor, or Morgoth, his corrupted name, the Tolkien equivalent of Satan. That is, that evil cannot create anything new. They can only corrupt and ruin what good forces have invented or made. In the Tolkien universe, the character Iluvatar, who represents God, has a noble angelic beings singing a harmonic song, until in his first rebellion, Morgoth seeks to bring discord into this harmony and corrupt the song. I'm convinced of this same conclusion. I think you can see with Eden, and with the Ten Commandments, and the "thou shalt not" statements protecting these original good things, that creation was good, and the law of God is seen as a beautiful thing, a path that we walk in life, not the oppression of a cosmic dictator. The perfect obedience of Jesus was a fulfillment of the law on many levels, including the obedience itself. But I believe it is necessarily also possible, always, to destroy, whether through corrupting something or annihilating it. You might then ask why it's even possible to desire to unmake these good things. I think it would be hard to argue that for every act of creation, there isn't also the possibility of unmaking it, as God made good things, and we continue in the work of making good things. It is also possible to unmake them. I'm going to expand on the nature of good and evil in my feature video on the commandments to love God, but here also I'm going to speculate a bit. I also think that it would be hard to argue whether it is possible to have a lack of infinite possibility. What I mean is there is no limit to what can be imagined to exist or to be done. When we do such things and take pleasure from them, it is because these are also originally good things but corrupted. For example, we might feel we have received justice when exacting revenge to an extent that might be considered going overboard, but we have done so in a manner that is self-centered and inconsiderate. When we steal, it is because we want something that is very good, and I don't think this requires any further elaboration. We simply experience good things in slightly different ways, so the desire to destroy also makes sense. Whether this line of thinking is true or not, I'm not going to make a definitive argument for, because I can't comprehend whether such a universe without the possibility to conceive of breaking things is possible, and of course everyone should grapple with this concept on their own, or simply ignore it if they choose to simply just go on with their lives. What's created is good. To destroy these things, to ruin any of these good inventions commanded in creation, is the origin of evil. See, evil didn't create anything new. There are no new evil things apart from good things, but simply destroying the things invented by the good, and breaking its harmony. To make things as precious as life and beauty, then to unmake that, with a heart bent on destruction, seems to be something we all feel very intuitively to be evil. Again, you on an individual level might still be convinced or assured that God, if he exists, created evil as well. But in this video I wanted to give another perspective from which that might not necessarily be true. The possibility to conceive of destroying a good design, of course, remains. Do we then lay the blame for that on God and say that evil is found in him? Or do we say that God has created good things, and that the possibility to destroy good things is not God's creation explicitly? On one level we can affirm that this wasn't God's intended design, but also we can acknowledge that God foreknew that the creatures he created would do evil. Do we take that responsibility entirely on ourselves and say that evil is not found in God? Regardless of how you answer, isn't it interesting that the Antichrist, the prophesied future world leader, is also given the nickname the Son of Perdition, or Son of Destruction, when he is called the Man of Sin, or Lawlessness?